We're continuing our study of the Seminar of Jacques Lacan, Book 1, Freud's Papers on Technique, 1953 to 1954. And today we're talking about Chapter 21, Truth Emerges from the Mistake. Until now, the topic of this whole seminar series has been, according to Lacan, the nature of transference. He says that on page 261. And one of the things he says he has been trying to show his students is that the only thing that overcomes transference in therapy is speech. Getting the patient to voice his or her wants, and the fact that he or she wants anything at all, is crucial to the psychoanalytic process. Lacan says on page 261, quote, "Despite all the effort one can put in to forget speech or to downgrade it into being just a means, analysis is in itself a technique of speech, and speech is the very milieu in which it moves." End quote. We intuitively understand, and Lacan likewise takes it to be the case, that the ordinary language we find in speech constitutes a symbolic system. But he makes a curious comment in passing that I would like to touch upon for how insightful it is. Lacan says, skipping over to page 265, quote, "The symbolic system of the sciences tends towards the well-made language, which one might consider to be its own language deprived of all reference to a voice." End quote. Scientific language is not like ordinary language. Science aims to create a language where a word precisely and exactly mirrors the thing in itself. H2O, for example, picks out a precise thing. It's not an imprecise concept like water or person, which admit of multiple meanings and only make sense within a certain context of speech. This point seems like a bit of a tangent, and I think it is nonetheless important for Lacan to remind us and for us to consider the fact that language is polysemous, contextual, and full of all kinds of striking contradictions and so on, which you would not find and not aim for when constructing an artificial or ideal language like you'd get with the sciences. Lacan goes on to say on page 265, quote, "What is peculiar to the field of psychoanalysis is indeed the presupposition that the subject's discourse normally unfolds within the order of error, of misrecognition, even of negation. But, this is the novelty," Lacan says, "during analysis, within this discourse which unfolds in the register of error, something happens whereby the truth erupts, and it is not contradiction." End quote. What is peculiar to psychoanalysis is that it's a science of the particular. It is unlike the other sciences in that it deals in specificities, but it is very much like the other sciences in that it's trying to arrive at that truth which is free from contradiction. That is about where the similarities end. Lacan says, also on page 265, quote, "In analysis, truth emerges in the most clear-cut representative of the mistake, the slip of the tongue," and he calls this manqué, which in French means missed or failed or abortive. Our abortive actions which succeed, those of our words which come to grief, are words which own up, Lacan says. Lacan goes on to say, "These acts, these words reveal a truth from behind. Within what we call free associations, dream images, symptoms, a word bearing the truth is revealed." If Freud's discovery has any meaning, it is that truth grabs error by the scruff of the neck in the mistake. End quote. The so-called mistake allows for breakthrough in psychoanalysis. It allows for the patient and analyst to work together to get at the truth. It is almost as if the truth of the unconscious is waiting to get out. Even through his body, Lacan says, the subject emits a speech, which is as such speech of truth, a signifying speech which he does not even know he emits. It is because he always says more than he means to, always more than he thinks he says. End quote. And that quote is actually on page 267. Going on with page 267, Lacan says, quote, "The subject, via something whose structure and function as speech we have recognized, testifies to a truer meaning than all he expresses by means of his discourse of error. The speech that the subject emits goes beyond, without his knowing it, his limits as discoursing subject, all the while remaining, to be sure, within his limits as speaking subject." End quote. Thank goodness you're getting Lacan at this level of clarity, as clear as it can be, it seems, because as we move forward, some of the subsequent seminars will reveal just how obscure Lacan can be and how even downright confusing he can be. We've covered a lot of ground in our discussion so far, so let's stop there and pick up with the rest of this chapter, chapter 21, next time. Thank you for listening.